As humans, we do not often operate very well in darkness. In total darkness, we feel rather helpless. We even like night lights to help our midnight trips to the bathroom not be so dangerous. Throughout history, darkness has been used as a metaphor for evil or ignorance or oppression. But light, on the other hand, allows us to see. It gives safety, security, peace, and hope. We use it as metaphors for hope and goodness. I can see the light at the end of the tunnel. Jesus said in John chapter 8 and verse 12 that I am the light of the world, and whoever follows me will not walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. Interestingly, this statement that Jesus makes about being the light of the world immediately follows a story that well illustrates the darkness of the human heart. In John chapter 8, a group of scribes and Pharisees come to Jesus bringing a woman that was caught in adultery. And they say to him in verse 4, Teacher, this woman was caught in adultery in the very act. Now Moses in the law commanded us that such should be stoned, but what do you say? But verse 6 says, they said this testing him, that they might have something of which to accuse him. In other words, they weren't interested in the law being followed or justice being carried out. They were using this woman to somehow trap Jesus so that they could accuse him. Jesus understood their duplicity. He understood their hypocrisy. And he responded in verse 7 by saying, He who is without sin among you, let him throw a stone at her first. Those words that Jesus said pierced their heart, and they were convicted. In verse 9 says, those who heard it being convicted by their conscience went out one by one, beginning with the oldest even to the last. This is what the light of the world does. The light of the world shines into the calloused human heart and exposes the sin and the hypocrisy that's there. For that reason, we're often afraid of the light of the world. In John chapter 3, in verse 18, it says, the light has come into the world, and men love darkness rather than light, because their deeds were evil. For everyone who practices evil hates the light and does not come to the light, lest his deeds should be exposed. The problem with that, the light is somewhat painful. When we see our sin for what it really is, when we see it for all of its ugliness, and we see our guilt and the shame that's there, it's understandable why we would want to avoid that. But that same light that exposes our sin is the light that also shines to give us hope and to show us the path that we can have to be redeemed from our sin. As we continue on in this story, after the scribes and the Pharisees leave, Jesus stands up, and there is the woman standing there, and he speaks to the woman in verse 10, and he says to her, Woman, where are those accusers of yours? Has no one condemned you? And she said, No one, Lord. And Jesus said to her, Neither do I condemn you. Go and sin no more. Now we see the light of the world shining as a light of life, showing a better path, showing the way that man should go. In John chapter 12 and verse 46, Jesus says, I have come as a light into the world, that whoever believes in me should not abide in darkness, should not continue down that path. And in Ephesians chapter 5 and verse 14, therefore he says, Awake you who sleep, arise from the dead, and Christ will give you light. Let's not be those who sit in darkness. Let's not be those who are afraid to come to the light. Yes, the light's going to expose our sin. Yes, we're going to see our sin and our guilt for all of its ugliness, and we'll have to face up to that, and we'll need to lament and mourn over that. We'll need to repent of that. But when we do so, the light of the world shows us the way we need to go. It gives us the hope that we need. Ephesians chapter 5 and verse 8 says, For you were once in darkness, but now you are light in the Lord. Walk as children of light.